How strong was Jiraya? Jiraya was quite the shinobi. Jiraya was the strongest shinobi in the leaf. When we are introduced to him back in OG, this is demonstrated by the village elders approaching Jiraya for the position of hokage. Although Jiraya would turn the position down, this would mean that he was the strongest and most trustworthy shinobi in Konoha, as well putting him at kage level. To support him being the strongest, Ebisu and Elite had this to say about the Sannin. In order to stop Orochimaru, touted as one of the three great ninja, it would take the help of another from that same trio. You Lord Jiraya, I take this to mean that Jiraya is the only one in the leaf that could stop Orochimaru. This is backed by Hiruzen sending shinobi to locate Jiraya thanks to the threat that was Orochimaru and Hiruzen himself, not thinking he was a match for Oro. So Jiraya should be above people like old Hiruzen, who was still hailed as the strongest of the Kages at that time. By virtue of being stronger than Hiruzen, Jiraya should also be stronger than any of the Kages of that time. And these Kages include the fourth, Yagura, Onoki, and Rasa, so we can assume that Jiraya is definitely somewhere around the high Kage level. Let's discuss some of Jiraya's other accomplishments. He was capable beating Konan, an Akatsuki member, with seemingly little difficulty. Akatsuki members all being 1,000 men strong at the minimum. These shinobi who have the skill and talent to battle 1,000 men at once and are Biju level. He was capable of dealing with the animal paths summoned with no difficulty. Turn a man into a toad with a touch, and force Itachi to use Amaterasu. Even Kisame was scared of Jiraya, Kisame later stating the stronger his opponent, the stronger he is. This would mean that even with the benefit of absorbing Jiraya's chakra and getting stronger, Kisame thinks he'd still lose. Keep in mind, Kisame was unaware of Jiraya's sage mode. Jiraya's intuition was next level, with him predicting the second coming of Madara. And in the anime canon of Boruto was capable of figuring out Sasuke was from the future as well as deduce his identity. Jiraiya also has completed the most mission with an overall of 1,839, making him one of the most experienced shinobi we've seen in the entire series. Some of his jutsus are fire style. Jiraiya is highly proficient in fire style. This shows through his combination jutsu with Gamabunta. And the various other fire style we see him use, he's having such a mastery over not just fire style, but as well his chakra control, that he can perform a large part of his fire style without any hand signs. Summoning jutsu, this is probably Jiraiya's most used jutsu. With it, he can summon several toads from Mount Myoboku, mostly summoned toad being Gamabunta, although he can summon far more. One toad I find to be interesting is Jiraiya's gourd toad that transports whoever it consumes to a different dimension full of an acid lake. Along with the summoning jutsu, he can as well perform bring down the house jutsu, where he summons a massive toad on top of his opponent. Another jutsu, similar to the summoning with the toad mouth bind, sensory jutsu. Jiraiya really only has two sensory jutsu, those two being Tengai, perimeter barrier, and sage mode. Everyone knows what sage mode does, so I'll only cover the Tengai barrier, that being a jutsu that senses everything that moves within its vicinity. Rasengan, no need to explain this one. Earth style. Jiraiya Earth style consists of Swamp of the Underworld, which he used twice, once against Orochimaru and another time on Pain, as well as a basic Earth Wall, Hair Jutsu. Jiraiya is capable of performing several jutsu with his hair, like Needle Jizo, Kebari Senbon, and Raging Lion's Mane, and many, many more. I don't want to waste too much time just talking about jutsus, so I'll only mention one more, that being Oil Bombs, which he sometimes mixes with his fire style Sage mode. I don't plan on going too in-depth on Sage Jiraiya, so I'll only list the amp provided, and some other stuff, the amp being 11x. Also, while in Sage mode, Jiraiya is shown using 5 jutsu at once. The two-toed he summons on his shoulder Fukasaku and Shima. Both perfect sages provide Jiraiya with several new jutsu, like Auditory Sealing Jutsu that seals all movement, and one of the strongest Genjutsu. Few other sage jutsu worth mentioning being Massive Rasengan, Kebari Senbon, which was stated to be the fastest sage jutsu, and the Bath of Boiling Oil. Jiraiya also knows Frog Kata, a flawless taijutsu taught to him by Fukasaku. Now let's begin the scaling section. The scaling, I believe, is most consistent with Jiraiya, specifically base. Jiraiya is above full power Danzo or MS Sasuke level. You can get to this conclusion in 2 ways, so these are the scaling you can see on your screen. This scaling is pretty straightforward. Orochimaru killed Hiruzen, who Danzo stated he never surpassed. Orochimaru and Jiraiya are narratively implied to be equal several times, and Danzo is relative to MS Sasuke. 3 Tomo and MS Sasuke reacted to and damaged the Raikage, while he's in V1 and 2, a younger and weaker A, being capable of damaging a rampaging 8-Tails Jinchuriki. The next way to get him to Danzo and Deep Sasuke level is pretty blatant. It's stated that the Hokage is the strongest ninja in the village, and Jiraya was chosen over Danzo to be Kage. To further back that up, when the village was talking about assigning a new Hokage after the Pain arc, Jiraya's name would have been brought up before anyone else's. The only reason they didn't pick him being he was dead. So these are the scaling you can see on your screen. One more thing to clarify about Danzo's scaling, specifically FP Danzo. So these are the scaling you can see on your screen. Danzo wasn't at full power during his fight with Sasuke, as he was trying to preserve chakra as stated, and didn't have access to Shisui's Sharingan until the end. Obito even comments on the fact that Danzo didn't have access to Shisui's Sharingan when complimenting Sasuke. So it's safe to assume that had Danzo had access to Shisui's M's, he would have been considerably stronger than what we've seen. And as the scaling has its, Jiraya should scale decently above FP Danzo. Counter-argument to that, Danzo wasn't introduced yet. So the statement from the elders shouldn't apply to him. Even though Danzo wasn't introduced doesn't mean he wasn't a character. Danzo is introduced very early in part 2, so it's highly likely Kishimoto had already planned him. But that's something no one can prove, so it's definitely not my main argument, so I'll move on to that right now. Danzo was established later in the series to have been in the Leaf at the time Jiraiya was asked to be Hokage, yet Danzo still wasn't chosen. Therefore, Jiraiya should still be stronger than Danzo, no matter how you slice it. Danzo could have gotten stronger between P1 and 2 due to natural progression, while, yes, it's possible he could have. It's unlikely considering characters usually only get stronger if they train or fight, and Danzo doesn't appear to do much of either. Also, taking into consideration Danzo's age, it's highly unlikely he's passively getting any stronger. The village elders don't know about Danzo's Sharingan arm. Therefore, they don't know how strong Danzo is. The village elders are stated to observe everything that happens in the Leaf. This would mean that they should have full knowledge on Danzo's arm and Koto, which would make sense considering how close they are to Danzo, and considering the level of influence they have in the Leaf. Moving on from debunking the counter-argument for Sage Jiraiya, he should be in the same tier as Pain and Sage Mode Naruto, thanks to several statements and implications leading to Pain being stronger or at the same level as Jiraiya before and after his death, with Pain constantly being stated to be the strongest member of the Akatsuki excluding Obito. Even the notoriously strong members obey him. So Sage Jiraiya should definitely be high-tier Akatsuki level thanks to scaling to Pain, which is shown when he blitzed and destroyed the human path's eyes, and later the animal path as well. Counter-argument for Jiraiya blitzing human path. Jiraiya was resolve amped. While yes, it's true Jiraiya hardened his resolve, allow me to explain why my interpretation is more probable. Keep in mind, I'm not saying you're wrong. First, it's stated Jiraiya hardened his resolve, pre-existing resolve, which means it was already there. It's not some new resolve that just appeared and made him a blitz tier stronger. But then how did the human path catch Jiraiya's punch? Simply put, Jiraiya's kicks have been demonstrated to be faster and stronger than his punches by a significant amount. Jiraiya isn't consistently shown to be able to contend with the lesser paths. Well, yes, he is. First in speed, as shown, he blitzed the human path and destroyed his eyes. Jiraiya, being capable of damaging and even having superior AP to the lesser paths, is consistent with animal path coughing blood when kicked by Jiraiya. Furthermore, Jiraiya's superior speed to the lesser paths is demonstrated when he arguably blitzes the animal path as well, which I'll get into next. To take it a step further, Jiraiya actually implies the only problem he's having with the paths he faced was the Preeta's ability to absorb ninjutsu. Under these circumstances, where my ninjutsu are being nullified, to face all three at once is a bit too much, and even implies that he would have one-shot the 3 paths with bath of boiling oil had his attack not been absorbed. So, under really any circumstance where Jiraiya can either eliminate Preeta path or destroy his eyes, the other paths essentially become sitting ducks for Sage Jiraiya. Again, my interpretation is backed by the 2 statements provided. Jiraiya even completely restrains the human path with a single, low-scale dark swamp. So yes, it's actually pretty consistent for Jiraiya to be superior to the lesser paths. Counter-argument for Jiraiya blitzing the animal path. The animal path reacted to Kabari Senbon, which Jiraiya states is his fastest jutsu. While yes, this is a valid argument, Jiraiya is shown tagging the animal path as I've shown, which Kabari Senbon couldn't do. Jiraiya's taijutsu has been demonstrated to be superior to Kabari Senbon. He was confused. Again, the closest you can get to supporting this argument is with this statement. But all that essentially states, if you're using the confused argument, is that the sound confuses their hearing. For obvious reasons, that wouldn't affect the animal path's reaction speeds. Animal path reacted, he moved his arms to summon. While yes, this is true, he did move his arms to summon. We don't know when he clapped his hands together. And no, it wasn't on the same panel, as it's consistent for a sound effect to be made when Pain claps his hand, unless done off screen. There was obviously no sound effect though, and considering Jiraiya's statement after "I'm not letting you summon," it's highly likely that the animal path clapped his hands together before Jiraiya jumped to attack. Moving on from debunking counter-arguments, there is more to suggest that Sage Jiraiya scales above the lesser paths and likely to the 6 paths. Kakashi states that Jiraiya's took on all 6 paths, and Obito also implies this by saying Pain had his hands full, and Pain of course did not deny it. And as directly stated by the Deva path, Pain is all the 6 paths. And keep in mind, yes, Kakashi is a reliable source. Pa told him how Jiraiya versus Pain played out. That argument can also be used to say Sage Jiraiya was stronger than Kakashi. Keep in mind that Jiraiya, who is implied twice to have taken on all 6 paths off panel, was one-armed, which we know possibly nerfs you, and was stated by the data books to be in no condition to fight further, making Sage Jiraiya appear stronger than you believed. The most consistent scale for Jiraiya seems to be, what if Kisame and Itachi fought Jiraiya in the hotel? So same thing goes, except Itachi just one-shot Sasuke so he can save his chakra for Jiraiya. Jiraiya gets Naruto to take Sasuke and run off to get some reinforcements while he handles them, trying to get them to a more open space as to not kill all the civilians from the scale of the battle. Jiraiya is holding his own 2-on-1, but some strikes are landing on him as he's in base form, and Itachi and Kisame are no joke of a duo. Then Guy arrives to support him. Guy can use up to 7th gate. Itachi would be slightly stronger than he was in the Sasuke fight, and he's going all out as well. Both sides have moderate intel, as they're all well known in the ninja world. Who do you think wins? I feel the face-offs would be Jiraiya versus Kisame and Guy versus Itachi, since Jiraiya has toad summons, which gives him a strong counter to Kisame's water style. And he has large-scale fire style as well, and Guy fighting Itachi because he's trained to counter the Sharingan with extreme taijutsu and looking at his feet. And Itachi can only use the Susanoo for so long before he dies or collapses, especially against 7th gate Guy's attacks. Is Jiraiya even stronger than Orochimaru? I am firmly convinced that Orochimaru and Jiraiya are on the same level of power, though their strengths lie in different areas, as do their weaknesses. In this series, that makes a lot of difference in who they can beat and who they can't. But first, and in my opinion, here's the main reason for the confusion surrounding who beat who. Naruto is not Dragon Ball Z. What I mean by that is that DBZ had clear-cut levels of power. And the more powerful person was stronger, faster, had more intense ki attacks, and pretty much had very little way of losing to the other person. If the power levels were wide enough, it was like fighting a level 1 character in an MMO. A substantially weaker enemy can't do any damage, no matter how hard they try or how off guard they catch their opponent. Even if the opponent isn't using his abilities and is caught completely flat-footed, your attacks mean nothing. I hope you'll at least agree with me that Naruto isn't like that. But when 2 fighters are close to one another in tier, strategy becomes hugely important. Matchups become important. If a strong fighter has a key weakness, he can be beaten by someone else with a strength in that area. And most of the key fights in the series are strategy battles between 2 fighters of similar tier. For example, Orochimaru is held to fight with brute force tactics, but he's weak to highly potent genjutsus. And an opponent by the name of Itachi has most of the best ones, along with some of the sneakiest ways of applying them. Since Naruto isn't a power tier series, we have to be careful about jumping to conclusions about someone's power based on who they've beaten. After all, when there's a mismatch, it all comes down to who is able to make their opponent have to rely on their weaknesses rather than their strengths. He deflects, diverts, distracts, absorbs, and regenerates his way to a stalemate with Naruto. Naruto's attacks are definitely stronger, and Orochimaru only directly takes a couple. But Naruto's battery of chakra is almost endless, and Orochimaru takes his leave before he overexerts himself. On the other hand, Jiraiya struggles with Naruto, in part because he's not expecting this fight, and also probably because he's a friend of Naruto and does not wish to hurt him. It doesn't seem that he summoned his toads for the fight, and he likely got wounded before he even considered bringing out his full repertoire of techniques. Jiraiya also has far less ways than Orochimaru of taking a hit or recovering from one. He's far better at dishing attacks than taking them, but he doesn't want to dish attacks in this case, and the Kyuubi definitely does, and probably started at melee range. Jiraiya versus Itachi would be a much different battle than Jiraiya and Naruto or Orochimaru and Itachi. Jiraiya wouldn't be quick to enter melee range, as that's not his forte. He'd summon things, he'd sling giant, terrain-altering jutsu around, he'd get on the backs of frogs that move very quickly and make it difficult to coordinate moves against him. And the frogs do their own jutsu, so it's very easy to get caught up in something too big to be handled. Jiraiya, with his massive chakra pool, would win a war of attrition. So Itachi would want to ambush him before he could leverage all his best techniques. But good luck ambushing someone who's on high alert because he's taking the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki out of the village. Itachi doesn't do big area of effect genjutsu. He's precise, but that level of precision requires close range he can't afford in this case. Itachi figures it's a bad risk to even attempt that fight, and I think he's spot on in his assessment. All of these can be true at the same time because we're not in DBZ. Power levels aren't involved. The strategic concerns are paramount because Jiraiya, Orochimaru, and Itachi are all most likely in the same tier, and their individual strengths and weaknesses govern their battles far more than any of them being too strong to be fought at all. Well, I think that covers it. Let me know if you think there is something I should include, and if you actually stayed this far. I appreciate you.